another episode of Office Hours, where I am super stoked about this week's guest. Today, we are going to be learning what companies can do when working in the enterprise space, but they can learn from the startup space. On today to tell us all about what's happening under the hood in partnerships and out there in the ecosystem is Kim Walsh, who is the VP of HubSpot for X, which we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that in just a second. But before we talk about her 9 to 5 and all that stuff, Kim, tell us more about your 5 to 9.
My 5 to 9. Wait, what do you want me to say around 5 to 9?
So like the things that you do when you're not working, like so if work is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
What do you do from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m.?
Well, prior to a year ago, I used to do a lot of things around hanging out with friends or, sort of doing things for me or with my partner. And now what I do, my 5 to 9 is very much taken up by my 2 twins, Christian and Emerson. So 5 o'clock is early bird dinner special and 7 o'clock is bedtime. And I'm probably in bed these days by 9 o'clock. So my 5 to 9 is very structured. And sometimes we get away, which I think is pretty healthy, but it's filled with a lot of love and, it's been amazing. So I have 2 twins, 1 boy, 1 girl, and they are just over a year old. So
and that blue plate special that happens around 5, but we like past the period P phase. We're into the solid foods, like we're trying cool and new things.
Yeah, they love everything.
They're not quite walking yet, right? I don't know.
Not yet. One's further along than the other. But
a little competition already in the fam.
No.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, so you and I met many, many moons ago when we both were on our corporate team at HubSpot, but you've had a really interesting journey in the sales space. Walk us through your career progression and how you found yourself being a part of the team at HubSpot. And then after that, we'll talk more about all the amazing success you've had at HubSpot.
Sure. Well, I always like to say I identify as being Canadian. So I'm from Canada. I'm Canadian. I came to the US to go to school and to play soccer a long time ago and stayed and just feel really lucky. The energy and the entrepreneurship and the ambition really brought me and attracted me to the US. So I've just had a lot of fun since I've been here. And for me, after school, I went into footwear and was a 3rd employee. So started with my entrepreneurial journey there, grew that up, and it was a fun ride. 2008, 2009 hit, and we had to shut the doors. And I started a marketing agency, which still exists today, with a friend. And then that led me to HubSpot. So I joined HubSpot in 2010. I've been there for 10 years, and I joined as an individual contributor and basically just raised my hand anytime there was an experiment or something that, they asked someone if they wanted to take on a little bit more and try and, make something of something. So that was really what kind of, if I look back at my journey, it's always been a little bit of entrepreneurial, a little bit of risk taking, and, just tried to do something and help other people at the same time. Oh, I actually can't hear you.
And now we're good. There we go. And risk taking, it's huge to uproot your life and move to the US and forge a new path here. So that risk taking and also with having to start out on your own too has given you that entrepreneurial spirit and giving you that due north, that direction of, like building your own destiny.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I definitely understand some people's immigration story. It took me 15 years to get a green card. Thank you, HubSpot. But, definitely have a big story there, but we won't go into too many of those details. But it's not easy to come to another country and live and work. But I managed to find a way. So it's all worked out.
Well, with 10 years at HubSpot, also a permanent residency here in the US, like a lot of really important and significant things have happened in your personal life as well as your professional life through and with HubSpot. But with 10 years under your belt at the company, you've seen HubSpot grow through so many iterations and phases of scale. Is there one particular phase that you remember, good, bad, or otherwise, of scale that you went through and experienced with the team at HubSpot?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty fortunate to be at HubSpot for 10 years. I feel like I've worked at, maybe 3 or 4 different companies inside those 10 years. And if I look back at, when was the most fun? Like, I think Brian and Dharmesh, the 2 co-founders of HubSpot, always has had a really big ambition and really big dream that I've been attracted to that still exists today. And I think when we IPO'd, like a lot of companies think about that as, like a piece that you, like a stake in the ground, or you crossed a finish line. And when I look back, that was 6 years ago. And I think that's really when HubSpot just got started. So it was like pretty scrappy in the beginning, it was fun. But I think when I look back, for some reason, when I've enjoyed it the most is really, after the IPO, like once we really started to become more of, just a marketing company and a marketing platform, really to become this whole platform and ecosystem. It's multidimensional, it's complex, but simple at the same time. And I think that the work is just ambitious and challenging. And, you can never really sit back on your laurels. It's always just like, what can we do to find new ways to go to market, to enter into new spaces, to build more partnerships, to drive incremental revenue for the business, and do it in an impactful way, right? So that's what HubSpot for X is. The X stands for, a lot of different things. And what we started is building HubSpot for startups, and we're going to evolve it to, HubSpot for nonprofits and HubSpot for strategic partners, and kind of really built this product inside of HubSpot that we can use and expand around our go-to-market engine. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it seems like things are still just kind of early innings. So it seems like there's a lot to do still, which is pretty exciting.
I mean, not many people can say that after 10 years of working in a company that there's still runway left. So that's pretty remarkable. And one thing that I want to hone in on is, you said you feel like you've had multiple jobs inside of this job that you've had at HubSpot. Can you illuminate a little bit more about that? And let's dive into like what those jobs have looked like and any similarities that we see inside of those jobs.
Sure. So, I mean, I started as an individual contributor, and prior to me being an individual contributor at HubSpot, I was a director of sales and marketing in the footwear company. So I had taken a couple steps back, right? Careers are not up and to the right. I had taken a couple steps back to come to HubSpot. And for me, being an individual contributor was never really fulfilling, right? Like as you think about your life journey around being fulfilled, it never really was fulfilling for me. I felt like I could put myself on a recorder and just do my job. And that was just, I kind of got a little bored, was doing a bunch of things on my 5 to 9 around like, entrepreneurial journeys, building apps and trying to do something. And then what I was off, I guess what I was kind of asked to do, but kind of raised my hand, was said, in the past in footwear, I'd sold to, Amazon, Zappos, QVC, a bunch of like, enterprise sales, and I enjoyed more of a complex sale. So HubSpot wanted to go up market. It was new. We didn't really have any in-house counsel at the time. And it was like, okay, yeah, you can go try and bring on some big logos and go up market. Good luck. And then we ended up getting some traction, and we sold to divisions within larger companies. And from there, it's really evolved and expanded. Now we have a whole global segment. So I did that for 4 years. A lot of people kind of came and went along the way. So I think being patient and persistence has paid off there. So that's worked really well for HubSpot over time. And then for me, I wanted to build and broaden my skill set outside of sales leadership. So, I have tons of experience with sales leadership, and I wanted to see other sides of the business and broaden my skill set around marketing, around product, around customer success, around partnerships and BD, and all while staying very close to being a revenue driver, because that's, I really just like that. It's a lot of fun to help companies and to help people. And yeah, that's really what it's looked like. So I just kind of raised my hand and tried to do a bunch of things, and also let it be known that I wanted to do more, and I wanted to build and broaden my skill sets. So thankfully, I had leaders that were able to give me the opportunity and took a chance. And then I think inside of HubSpot specifically, when you try and take on a risk and do an entrepreneurial journey, if it works out, it tends to be rewarding on a pretty fast time frame. So, my group has grown really fast, and we've been able to build a really great team around it and got a lot of support from HubSpot. So it's been good.
There's such an interesting similarity between the work that you were doing to evangelize and sell HubSpot externally, and also sell internally the vision that you had for pioneering initiatives that were kind of a new frontier for HubSpot. As I look at both of these, underneath selling externally, trying to sell the vision, trying to sell the value, trying to identify and help someone see the future state of what could exist for them after adopting HubSpot, but also having to do that exact same sales motion inside and tell all of your stakeholders, this is what I see the vision for this, like, follow me, trust me on this. Here's the data to validate this. Like, what do you see as the two underpinning tenets of your success in those two arenas of selling externally and internally?
Well, I would say, first of all, it helps when the co-founders, really like what you're doing. So serving the startup community is one, and the entrepreneurial community is one that, to the co-founders of HubSpot is really important. So I would just say, that helps. But outside of that,
having bosses that really like you do tend to help.
And they're having their, sharing their vision and trying to execute on their vision is helpful. But I think for me, in order to do the work and, outside of those conversations, when you sort of go out into the organization, both internally and externally, right? We focus on building a brand, and to do that, we have to build trust. We have to build trust internally, and you have to build it externally. So yeah, and a lot of it is getting things done via influence, right? Like, who you're talking to, what are their goals and what are our goals, and do we trust each other? Hey, will they take a chance on something that's, a little bit early on, and can we grow it? And do you see the path? And, can you take a leap of faith with us? And that's really all about trust. So, there was a growth product group that I remember we kind of hacked together a vision of what we wanted. And there was an individual over there, Chris Miller, who said, I see what Kim sees, and we trust her, and let's help her build it. And that today is like a really important piece of what we do, arguably the most important piece. So without trust and without influence and without collaboration, we definitely couldn't have built what we built, and helped startups, right? And serve them. And I think, we look at ourselves, and our team looks at ourselves as our mission is to help serve millions of startups and help them grow, largely by giving them a price reduction or a price advantage or a scholarship or discount on HubSpot, because that's the thing that they couldn't afford HubSpot. So we see ourselves as largely making sure we're championing our community and our ecosystem to make sure that, we're getting the buy-in from all parts of HubSpot, that we're growing and helping this ecosystem. So, it's a little bit of being a lobbyist at times, but again, you can be a lobbyist and build trust when the vision makes sense and it's aligned with the organization's mission. So, I feel fortunate to be able to do it, but yeah, it's been interesting.
I will say it's the first time I think I've heard lobbyist and trust be used in the same sentence as one another, but we'll talk about that one in maybe another episode. But
yeah,
so trust in selling, trust in internal selling, stakeholder management, that's a really amorphous term. When you think about getting to that time to trust, what we call it the triple T here, how do you go about establishing or expediting that time to trust in the folks that you're working with?
Yeah, for me, it kind of exists as like a little bit of a mental framework that's authentic to me. And so I really enjoy being curious around learning two things, right? One is personal pain, and two is business pain. So I think it's easy to build trust if you're coming at it from an authentic place around, anytime you're building something or selling something, the person on the other end, if you can talk to them and say, okay, well, what are you going through? Because at the end of the day, everyone's a user, everyone's, you're selling to an individual. And then also that individual is a member of a company. So I just think digging into both personal pain and business pain is really helpful in uncovering, at the end of the day, how you are going to help the person in their role or at their company, and how you're going to help the company. So hopefully your product or service is valuable in that way. But if it is, and you dig into both personal and business pain, and you're naturally, genuinely curious about it, and you want to help at the end of the day, I think that's how you build trust and essentially are like really effective in the role as either a seller or a builder.
Yeah. And you used a term that really struck me, which is authenticity. Like consumers today are so much more educated, so much more informed, and so much more aware of what is disingenuous and what is authentic. As you've led teams, now you've pioneered new frontiers for HubSpot. How do you coach your teams to lead with that authenticity and then do it at scale? Because it's hard to replicate behavior, especially new contributors to your team, and then scale that over time.
I think transparency matters. I think, being able to, build rapport with people around, are you naturally curious? Are you asking good questions, right? I think like the credibility is in the type of the question that you ask for someone, that you ask to someone. And I think that drives a lot of it, right? Like if you're a leader of people and you're genuinely curious on like how you're going to help people, and you ask them the right questions, and you're there to help guide them, and you're transparent with them, and you're honest with them, and you're just bought into their success. I think that's very similar skill sets to being a seller or being a builder or growing a business. All those things combined. The other thing is like if you can do that in an authentic way and people trust you, I think at the end of the day, if you look at your career, like are people rooting for you? Are they happy for you and your business when you're successful, or are they not? And I think that's been interesting at times. I've been on both sides, and you got to learn and grow. Sometimes there's a really good feedback that comes, that maybe you're not doing something right, or maybe saying something the right way, right? Words matter. And maybe feedback is amazing to get along the way because it allows you to take some steps back in order to take some steps forward. So just like feedback, transparency, building trust, all those things, I think, well, it's like they're sort of intangible. And at times it's, you can run things very metric driven or very goal oriented. But it's really the things outside of the metrics and the goals that get everyone on the same train.
I think that's so well put. Oftentimes we take a very binary approach in sales. You look at input and output only, and there's so much nuance in what makes for effective selling today. And that nuance is in authenticity and in trust. If you're a hiring manager and you're looking to build a team that knows how to build that trust, knows how to be authentic, what do you look for in building the team of directors, of individual contributors around you to have that DNA, that culture in sales of trust and authenticity?
I think it's a good question. I mean, I don't think there's a silver bullet out there, right? I think it's more around, what works for the culture of your organization, and, what are some sort of like, what is your culture like? What is the key principles? What are your non-negotiables? And like, do people sort of fall into that? And like, what type of, leader are you looking for? Like a director, can they be strategic as well as lead people and manage tasks, right? I think that's a really important thing. Is it a first line manager you're hiring, which is if it is, right, that first line manager is arguably the most important, holds the most important relationship between, director level and above, which is often seen as senior leadership, and frontline, individual eyes and ears on the ground. So that frontline leader is really important. And, sometimes I think if it's a first-time frontline leader, or if it's an experienced frontline leader, really digging into the why, like why do they want to be in leadership? There's a lot of different angles you can take in a career. So I think the frontline leadership one is really important. And then I think like a step up from that, like a director level role is really important around solving, can they pick their head up at 40,000 feet? And can they go pretty detailed to make sure, and can they, influence people around them with focus and execution, right? Like so many things are coming in you. Can you take something that's really messy and simplify it, right? Like, can you pass down clarification? So communication, I think even in a distributed world or a remote world where we're all living in today, like communication is so important, because without communication, you can't have organizational alignment, and a strategy is one thing, but an alignment is key. So like how all that happens inside, I mean, I'm not an expert in it, I'm just sharing with you what I've noticed along the years that matter. And I think what you can look for, in terms of hiring individual contributors, I think curiosity is a really big one, right? It leads you down this interesting path of what are you interested in? What do you do on your 5 to 9? Like what's outside of work? Because at the end of the day, are you an interesting person? And do you have interests yourself? Or, work's not everything, right? It's a big piece of what we do, but there's, as you guys are, really digging into, which I think is great, is there is this whole other element to like, who are you as a person? And can you bring your personality and who you are as a person to work? That's important today. So I think I don't know, I just said a lot there, but I think it all kind of rolls into one.
I think you beautifully articulated what is so hard for leadership. And we see this a lot when we talk about sales leadership, is the fact that, work isn't everything. And most sales leaders don't get that fully yet. Most sales leaders don't understand the impact of allowing someone to bring their whole selves to work. The 5 to 9 and the 9 to 5 have a place. And quite frankly, we're all living in our 5 to 9s, and our 9 to 5s are very much integrated in one place. And I think you've very beautifully articulated what leaders can do to foster a sense of alignment through communication in particular, but lead by example to show what it means to be authentic. You have to be authentic and hold yourself to that high level of standard so that your teams can replicate those behaviors and put those behaviors out there. How you act internally is how they will act externally as well, prospect and customer facing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also one thing that I think, just in terms of tactics, like if you are a leader, and you get into a one-on-one, I just wonder, like, are you starting with your agenda, or are you being a good listener and starting that one-on-one at whatever level you are in the organization? Like, are you starting your one-on-one with their agenda or with your agenda? Like just little things like that. I think, you got to be a good listener, and you got to make sure that, you're listening to the people and you're giving them the space. So I don't know if there's anyone out there listening, but that's just one little thing that I try and make sure I always do, but I'm not perfect at it. But it's, I've worked for some really great leaders, and ones that I would just say are like really amazing people and really amazing listeners. So that also helps with building trust.
I'm sure that there's something to that of leading by example in your one-on-ones as an extension of the behaviors you want to subconsciously imprint on them, even though it is authentic for you to want to lead with them and have that servant leadership mindset. A seller has to be a servant leader to their prospect as well. So that skill of listening, of putting that person first and foremost, and using that authenticity to build relationships, build the relatability in that relationship, and kind of remove the friction of a sales process, that dynamic of it not being a sales process. I think you've cracked the nut. Like you figured it out. Leaders who lead by example and show people how to be servant leaders and listen more frequently are ones that are making an impact in that extension and beyond and through their team out into their prospect and customer base.
Yeah, I think there's something there, right? I think if one example that really sticks out in my mind of like probably my favorite day as an individual contributor, as a seller, was when the person on the other end, after I'd like given a demo, said, well, who can I talk to about like price, and who do I talk to when I want to buy? And I was like, they don't see me as, I was like, well, the answer is me, which is pretty cool. That only ever happened once. And that was the coolest question I ever got, because I was like, okay, great. Like, you trust me. You just thought of me as someone helping you, to the point where you think you need to talk to someone different around like pricing and packaging and how do I get started? And I was like, oh, well, I can help you with that. That's my role too. So that was just, I don't know if that's ever happened to anyone out there, but that only ever happened once. But I was like, okay. That's when I felt like I was like, oh, that was really cool.
Yeah. So you suddenly the conversation shifted, right? It wasn't a selling conversation. It was a consultation between two friends, just kind of brainstorming. You became a trusted advisor in that situation. And again, the close wasn't even part of that person's mindset of what was happening in the conversation, even though you know full well this was going to happen eventually in the relationship.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also think like the two things there real quick, like if you can find your why, like for me, when I was an individual contributor, it wasn't necessarily the most fulfilling thing to me, but my why when I was, selling marketing, what a marketing platform was really around, I loved empowering and helping the VP of marketing because I knew what it was like to be a VP of sales and to think that marketing was just spending a ton of money and driving leads and then, getting just not having a seat at the table. So I really enjoyed empowering the marketer, right? That was my why then. I know my why now around like HubSpot for startups and HubSpot for X is like, I think startups and entrepreneurs are the most amazing people out there, right? Everyone sort of, it allows you to be free and it allows freedom if you can take on a risk and make it successful. And like, I think, that just that ambition, that for me is like, I could talk to those people all day long, right? It's just like the coolest thing. It's not stale, it's not boring, it's energizing, it's ambitious, it's, so you got to find your why, right? And I think if you find it and you're lucky enough to spend time doing it, then the trust piece and the authentic piece, you can't fake it when you get really excited and people on the other end can feel it.
Yeah, you're harping on this tagline we use a lot around our team, which is like care about the person, not the persona. Like you get excited about helping the VP of marketing. Yeah, have a seat at the table and have a peer-to-peer conversation with our counterparts in sales who thinks we're just doing arts and crafts. We're hanging out with popsicle sticks and pipe cleaners. But like, no, we're more scientific than anybody gives us credit for. But you enabled that, you facilitated that. And that for you helped to champion the person who could have a one-to-one conversation with their peers around the table. And you didn't just think about the persona of like, here's a holistic marketing automation solution. You got very personal with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, what is your biggest challenge? What is the biggest pain? And like, at the end of the day, my goal is to figure out how I can help you solve that and then help the company solve it.
Yeah, I think it's so well put. Kim, you have had so many different things to offer in today's conversation. I want to try to synthesize and summarize this. The first is when you are going through and trying to position value, the first thing that you need to do is build that trust. And trust starts with the authenticity of which you are approaching a conversation. Now, to get authentic, you have to be a really good listener and use those listening skills to get to the why, get to understanding what motivates that person and understand what intrinsically will help overcome any obstacles they have as people, not as holistic personas. Did I miss anything in that?
The only thing I would say is we're all always a work in progress. So having either a growth mindset or an infinite mindset, not a fixed mindset, I think helps. Like I am definitely no expert. I'm just passing along a lot of information a bunch of people have passed me. So hopefully it's helpful. But, I was just trying to think about like, how can we get better? How can we always be a work in progress? And if you have that mindset, I think like sales or building or joining a company that has ambitious goals, you tend to find yourself in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed what we're doing here at Office Hours, right? Like everything that I've learned through people sharing their experiences through me. And I've made my own iteration of that their shared experience in that. But like real learning doesn't always happen in the classroom. It can, but the real learning happens when you surround yourself with folks who are super smart, super talented, and you turn their learnings into growth opportunities for yourself. So thank you for sharing that knowledge and for joining me here on Office Hours. It was such a pleasure to get to reconnect with you, but also get to learn from you yet again.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for having me, MK. I enjoyed it.
Of course. We'll have you on for another episode, I'm sure.
Okay, great.
Bye.